Hey guys, and welcome back to another live stream. Hope you guys are ready to rock and roll. My apologies for being a few extra minutes late. I'm always trying to get here on time, but sometimes I can't help myself, and I get here a little later than what I usually want to get. Just as I was about to start the live stream, Christian needed some help, locating some materials, because again, remember, we moved out here a few months ago and we still got things you're kind of like all over the place, especially when it comes to like, materials. Remember, she's an artist, and, she's always working on a new project or whatever. So, again, she was working on a new project and, trying to locate some of her stuff. So I was out, helping her, trying to find it. She's on the mission on herself now, trying to figure that out. But anyways, welcome back to another show. And today's live stream, we're going to be talking about, well, whether or not you have an exit plan or not. For some of you guys, this might be something easy that you don't have to think much about. But for a lot of you guys out there, in fact, for many of you guys, once you start getting that plan ready, once you start going down this path, all right, that you're going to leave, the USA, Canada, wherever, move to Mexico, you start realizing how difficult this endeavor actually is. How much more work it involves. It's not just packing your bags and leaving. Again, for some of us it is, but not for everybody. In fact, for many people out there, they start to quickly realize, oh, wait a minute, this is it's a lot to do here. It's a lot more difficult than I originally assumed. And so, what we're going to be talking about today is a little bit about my story, and then we're going to talk about your stories out there, and you're going to, understand a little bit, as to what I mean, as to why is it more difficult for some people, and so on and so forth. So, but again, before we get started, how we do here on these live streams, I like to give it a few more minutes in order for, people to, finally get the notifications and make their way, to the show. So shout out to everyone out there. Shout out to Parrish, Park, Parker 3, whatever, Mason, Big Turk, Memo, everybody out there. So everybody, hello, welcome. Hello from Mérida, Yucatan. I see people here, in the chat, coming from all over the place. We got Big Turk all the way from Canada, and so on and so forth. Park says, yeah, it's very easy for him. Her. I don't know. And he has people in Mexico. He has family, friends out here. So obviously it's a little easier. We got Memo there, not a fan of Mérida, saying it's a bit boring. And again, I totally understand. It's not for everybody. For me, that's one of the things that I like, the fact that it is a bit boring and a little bit, quiet, out of the limelight. Again, I'm a big city boy. I was born and raised in Miami, Florida. If I wanted that kind of atmosphere, I would be living in Cancun. I would be living over there, but I don't. I prefer more of the northern Florida kind of feel. This is why I love it out here, because again, out here in Mérida, it's just very quiet, and as some people say, a bit boring, or a lot boring. Again, depending on what you're looking for. At this age and at this point in my life, yeah, I welcome boring. If I want excitement, I'll just live in the USA, right? So, anywho's. Oh, there you go. See, I'm glad I did not assume your gender, Park. Thank you. Thank you for confirming that. Alex, hello from Chi-Town. Oh, so hello from Chicago. Shout out to you. That's right. Yeah, Mérida is a very laid-back town. Again, it's not for everybody. I totally understand that. Again, as someone that was born and raised in Florida, this is why I love it in this region. And if you go to Campeche, it's even more boring. It's even more quiet. And again, depending on who's watching this, well, that will depend on whether or not this is going to appeal to you. If you want more excitement, then it's probably better if you move to a bigger city. Perhaps go to Guadalajara, Mexico City. There's a bunch of other places out there where there's a lot more to do, a lot more excitement. It's a lot younger. Again, Guadalajara is a very, very young city. It's like the the Silicon Valley of Mexico and so on and so forth. So, for a lot of people, that's where they make their home. They go all the way out there. Some of you guys know my story. I basically put my finger on the map. I didn't know anything about Mexico, and I landed here, and it was great. And, for me, I landed here as a happy mistake, and it was like the best thing that ever happened to me because, it was what I've always kind of wanted. Again, as someone coming from Florida, it's very similar, vibes, the Caribbean vibes, nice and quiet, relaxed, chill, all that stuff, so for me, that's what I was looking for. Memo says Merida is already kind of big. I mean, I guess, it depends on who you're asking. If you're asking me, coming from Miami, I used to live in Los Angeles, things like that. I mean, this is not big. This is very small, tiny, in comparison to, where I'm come from. For a lot of people out there that come from bigger cities, coming to Merida is still small and tiny compared to wherever you might be from. But for some people out there, if you're coming from a small village, a small town, a small area, out in the USA, well then, of course, Merida might seem like a bigger, more daunting place. Again, it just all depends on who you are out there. So, we got so we're going to get into the conversation in a second. I just want to answer a few questions here, or answer a few of the comments before we get started. Healing Hearts Academy says, given the current political climate, not making $4,400 a month for temporary residency, will I get deported if I stay past 6 months? Short answer, no, you will not get deported. So again, let's talk about residency for a quick second. I know for a lot of you guys out there, ever since the RNE program was taken away and getting residency has become more difficult, for a lot of you guys. Well, a lot of you guys out there have basically, almost even given up on the whole idea of moving to Mexico. But again, this is why I make all these videos on this channel all the time, because it's, when I came out here, I wasn't, I had $1,500 left to my name. I had zero really, of any kind of value to me. So imagine me trying to get my residency through financial means. Well, that was impossible. So I got it through marriage. Again, I've been happily married to my wife, for over 5.5 years, almost 6 years now. But that's how I got my residency. There's a lot of ways to get your residency. I got videos on my channel, talking about how to get residency. In fact, here, let's just go to my website real quick so you guys can get an idea. So you go to my website, josearteaga.com, and you got tons of free information there. Right at the top where it says Mexico, moving to Mexico, general information, you can click on there. And you're going to get all kinds of information, free information, on how to find a place to live, how to find some work, any kind of, income. Again, some of the most asked questions I answer for you guys. But towards the bottom, you got 2 videos, okay? The first video is a complete list of all your residency options. So look at that. You never know. You might be able to find another option. And then if you cannot find an option, again, for whatever reason, none of these options work out for you, there's still another option that is not, necessarily recommended on most channels and is not recommended to most people out there on what to do. All right, but I made another one that says how to get Mexican residency without financial requirements. Now, back in the day, again, we used to have this thing called the RNE program, the regularization program, which allowed people to get their residency no matter what their situation was, really. But that program has been gone since March of this year, April of this year, I forgot. And again, I have the inclination, again, I hear things that program is going to come back, and I just hear things. Again, I made a video. Again, if you watch that video, I explain in extreme detail as to how I'm pretty confident that program is going to come back. And again, at the end of the day, residency is going to be available to just about everyone out there. Now, if for whatever reason, like I said, you don't qualify for any of the residency options already available out there, again, from watching this other video, again, one of the options out there, which is what I discussed in this video, the one without the financial requirements, is, again, you come out here on a FMM visa. All right, you come out here on a tourist permit. Okay, you get the 6 months, and you're living out here, and you're basically living on a perpetual tourist visa, meaning that once your visa is up, all right, you go on a visa run, you get it renewed, and then you come back and you keep living here. Now, for some people, they don't even do that. They just come out here and they live on their 6 months tourist visa, tourist permit, and then once it expires, well, they just stay here. They just stay put, and they just keep sticking around until eventually another program like the R&E program that comes out every few months comes online, and then you're able to get your residency that way. Because what the R&E program was a program that comes online every several years, basically to regularize, make you legal, regularize those that are unregularized. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you are here illegally, well, it's not illegal, because there is no illegal or legal status per se when it comes to residency. So if you do not have legal status, meaning you don't have a permit, whether it's a residency permit or an FMM or what have you, then you're just unregularized. That's it. All right. You're just like not in the system. So eventually what they do is that every several years they start this program where basically you're allowed to get your residency, because what they do is they just tell all the people out there, hey, people that are living in Mexico on an expired visa, come to the immigration office and we'll get you your residency, because obviously you've been living here for a certain amount of months, certain amount of years, okay? And you're obviously a part of the community, so we just want to get you your residency papers. All right, we know that you haven't been able to get them any other way, so we're here to help you with that. So again, you watch that video for more information on that situation. But this is why we're talking about this today, because the reality is that there's a lot that goes into moving to Mexico. It's not just the whole idea of like, hey, I'm gonna pack my bags, I'm gonna get out of Dodge, and I'll figure it out. Again, you could do that. I did that. Some of you guys have done that with some success and some with not so much success. And it really all depends on the individual out there and what you're willing to do, put up with, and so on and so forth. All right. We've talked about this at length in my videos. All right. So again, you guys can just literally watch my other videos for more information on all that stuff. So hold on one second. Hold on. I got it. 1 second. Okay. All right, we're back. So, all right, so let's just get into it. So my story, all right? So for some of you guys that don't know my story, again, I'm going to just give you a quick synopsis of my story, all right? I know a lot of you guys have heard my story, but long story short, Again, I was in a bad place in the USA. I was about to live out of my car, and kind of like just do that thing that a lot of us, basically have been forced to do in the USA these days. And so I decided, hey, I want to get out of LA. I want to get out of the USA before I have to live out of my car and again, spiral out of control. Because you know how it is, right? Once you're, living on the street and, again, it's one of those things that once you fall in that hole, it's really difficult to get out. And I think a lot of you guys in the audience are trying to avoid that, which is why you're trying to figure out how to get out of there before it's too late. But with that said, that's when I made my decision. And again, I couldn't find a place to live in the USA. I couldn't find a good job. I couldn't find anything. And so during that time, I was able to find that there was an option of for me to move to Mexico and then just figure it out here. And so I did that, and I did figure it out here. Again, if you guys have been with me long enough through my story, you guys know that I've been able to do it. Now, why was it so much easier for me? Well, because I had already lost everything in the USA. I already lost everything. I had basically nothing, all right? And so it was a lot easier for me to just pack my bags and get out and move out here. As opposed to for a lot of other people out there, there's a lot of people out there that you might have a spouse, you might have kids, you might have a family that you're either taking care of or what have you. You might have a career, a job. You might have a home. You might have you have all of these things that once you start really looking into, okay, I'm going to move to Mexico. That's when things start getting a little bit more difficult, because it's like, okay, you got a home. Well, what are you going to do with that home? Are you going to sell the home? Are you going to rent out the home? Are you going to keep the home? When you move to Mexico, what part of Mexico are you going to move to? What are you going to do about residency? What are you going to do about a job? Meaning, are you going to be able to transfer your job down here or not? When it comes to like paperwork, again, depending on whether you have pets, whether you have kids, whether you have whatever. So it's like before you know it, it all starts adding up and it starts to discourage you very quickly. In fact, I've mentioned it for years, for years and years and years, basically since I landed here in Mexico, that as the years would go on, it was going to be more and more difficult for you to get out of Dodge. And so subsequently, yes, as the years have gone on, things have gotten a lot more difficult for basically all of you guys out there looking for a way out, looking for, a way to land on your feet. In some cases, in some areas, it's gotten easier because back when I first moved to Mexico, there was no YouTubers, talking about what life is like out here, how to make the transition, how to do all these things, all right? I had to figure it out on my own. And this is why I started doing the YouTube channel and doing the things that I do on my channel, because I realized that a lot of the information that a lot of you guys take for granted these days wasn't out there. It just didn't exist. I had to figure it out on my own. And as I was, basically learning as I went along, you guys, got to benefit from it because you guys got to benefit from everything that happened to me, the good, the bad, the ugly. It didn't matter because if something bad happened to me or I made a mistake when I was doing XYZ, well, obviously I would tell you guys about it. You guys will learn about it. And then that would help you guys whenever you're doing, you were doing your, transition or planning on doing your transition out here to Mexico as to what not to do, as opposed to, also learning what to do. All right. Because again, for a lot of you guys already know, you guys have been able to learn a lot, from my own experience of moving out here and living out here. But one thing that I've learned, again, when I moved out here, I didn't really have much left, if anything at all, in the USA. So I made the transition to move out to Mexico a lot easier for me. But as I've been living here and I've been talking to so many of you guys out there throughout the years, I've realized, it's not that easy. So, for people that are having a lot of problems, it's a lot more struggle, out in the... shout out with we got a $5 super chat from someone out there. I don't know if you want me to mention your name, but anyways, thank you so much. Appreciate it, for the $5 super chat on the Cash App. But anyways, as I was saying, it was a lot easier it was very difficult for me in the USA, for a lot of us in the USA that don't have much of anything to survive and to, push forward and all that stuff. But once you make that decision, all right, I'm going to leave the country or whatever, it makes it a lot easier, for you to, finally, get out. Because again, for me, it was just, pack a few bags, get a plane ticket, get an Airbnb, and that's it. I already know Spanish. Again, I don't know if you guys know my name, Jose Artiaga. All right. So it's because of my name. My parents were Cuban. I learned Spanish, as my first language. I eventually learned English in the USA. But for me, it was a lot easier of a transition because, well, I was already in survival mode and I was already living a certain, frugal lifestyle, basically just trying to survive day to day. So it was easy for me to come out here and just keep doing that here. On top of that, the language, I already knew the language. Another thing was the fact that, living in this particular area of Mexico was very similar to what I was already used to from growing up in Florida and so on and so forth. So, for me, it was a lot easier transition. In fact, things became a lot easier as, I was living out here in Mexico, as opposed to living in the USA. Now, for a lot of people that are very embedded into life in the USA, a lot of you guys that are, basically living that American lifestyle, meaning, again, you got jobs, you got cars, you got a home, you're basically, connected at the hip with the USA. That's, you guys are the ones that have a lot more difficulty getting out. And not just getting out, but establishing yourself somewhere else. Again, especially if you don't know Spanish, especially if you have perhaps you have kids and you got to figure out a way to get them in school. Perhaps if you're my age, you're young, 30s, 40s, whatever, and you still have to work, you got to find a job. all the difficulties that come, from the cultural, what's the word I'm looking for? The cultural shock. Okay, some people have more of a culture shock than others. For me, the culture shock wasn't that big of a big deal. It wasn't that great of a shock per se, coming from more, my background. But for some people, I mean, think about it. If you're coming from Vancouver, you're coming from Seattle, you're coming from Chicago, you're coming from a lot of these places. Well, obviously you come out here to Mexico and it's you're on a different planet. Everything is completely different. The culture is completely different. Everything is just very different. And so that's the thing. It's like a lot of people, unfortunately, they don't take any of these things into account. A lot of you guys, might be watching my videos and watching other channels out there, other videos. Again, just hoping and dreaming that one day, if it gets bad enough, you're going to be able to leave. And you're just going to, pick up and get out of there. But the reality is that's not how it works. When you actually, if that's your plan, if your plan is waiting for the absolute last possible moment, all right, to leave, then you're going to find out very quickly that you're probably not going to be able to leave at all. All right, let alone do all the steps that you need to do in order to leave. So this is why it's very important for a lot of you guys already to start creating an exit plan, start working on the exit plan. If you really do want to leave and you want to live in Mexico or live in another country, well, then you again, it's instead of taking a vacation to Disney World or taking a vacation to Yosemite National Park or the Grand Canyon, why don't you take a vacation to the country that you plan on moving to? Why don't you take a vacation abroad, live somewhere else for a little bit, and see if you're going to like it or not? Because that's another thing too. A lot of people will come to Merida, where I live in Mexico, and you hate it. You hate it because whether you think it's boring or you might think it's too hot or you might not like whatever it is. There's certain things you just probably don't like. The food, I don't know. And then eventually you realize, you know what? I should have moved to Guadalajara. You know what? I should have moved to Querétaro. You know what? I think it would have been better if I would have been to Puerto Vallarta or whatever it is. All right. And so instead of finding out the hard way, by just packing up and leaving, well, again, if you have the ability to do so, well, start exploring, start checking out other areas, start visiting other parts of the world, other parts of Mexico, and see what might be best for you. Now, again, I understand, not everybody has these options. For me, I didn't have an option to be flying around and visiting all these different spots. I only had a few bucks left to my name. I had to get out with my bags, of clothes and crap, and I had to land somewhere immediately. And this is why I put my finger on a map. It's a more complicated story, but I'm just giving you the short version here. I put my finger on a map and I landed here. And man, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. But imagine if I would have landed somewhere that would have been very cold. I would have hated it. I love the fact that it's very hot out here. For me, this is something that is great. The fact that I got the beach, about 30 minutes away. The fact that it is quiet and chill and relaxed. And the fact that it is close. It's only like a 2-hour flight or less, to Miami. My friends and family come visit me here all the time, whether they're coming from Florida or other parts of the USA. So regardless, for me, it was a lot easier, for me to just, come out here and make that transition because I didn't have much. But the more you have, the more you're tied down to the USA, the more difficult you're going to start seeing it becomes. For a lot of you guys, you don't even have your passport yet. You know what I mean? Like you're planning on moving to Mexico and you don't even have a passport. Some of you guys, once you start applying for that passport, you figure out very quickly that you can't even get a passport, for whatever reason. So, and it's not just a passport. It's just so many things that are involved when it comes to, moving to another country. For me, again, I was able to make it out here on just a few bucks. All right. Not only because I spoke Spanish, but I also had survival skills and I also had an income. All right. It was a small income, from my freelancing job, work, whatever. But that's it. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I was able to, make it out here and survive, all right? But for a lot of people, they don't even have basic survival skills, which is the reality of it. A lot of you guys, have just been living a just normal, regular life. And then all of a sudden now moving out here, it's a daunting adventure. And so for some people, they they welcome the adventure, they welcome the giant journey that's they're about to embark on, but not everybody. So Game Zone says, have I ever considered being a comedian? It's funny you say that. Yes. I have considered being a comedian. In fact, I remember in high school, when you're in high school and you got to take that test that tells you, what career you're going to be good for, what career you're going to be good at. My number one thing that I got suggested, from my counselor was comedian. The second thing was lawyer. And then the third thing was politician. So, I don't know what to tell you. So I guess they did know a little bit something, about me. But as you guys know, I went into the restaurant industry and I became a chef. I became a cook. That's what I did for most of my life. But this is why I do what I do now. Sure, I'm providing information to you guys. I'm providing, all kinds of knowledge and all this other stuff. But at the same time, I'm trying to entertain you guys. In fact, I got my other channel, for some of you guys out there that are curious. We go live on the other channel. Oh, sorry, my other channel. As soon as we're done here. So again, I go live on this channel. All right. Every single Thursday, we talk about whatever, a topic, is at hand, pertaining to moving to Mexico, living abroad, whatever. And then I got my other channel, which is, just entertainment, just pure entertainment. So you can go on ahead and, check out that other channel. Once we're done here, we're going to go over there. All right. And we're going to be talking about, the real reason I don't own a TV. Now, again, I talk about all kinds of things on the channel. You guys can check it out on your own. I got all kinds of different topics. But yes, entertainment. Yes, I'm trying to entertain, trying to keep it lighthearted, trying to have some fun here with all of you guys and so on and so forth. Speaking of which, real quick, before I forget, guess what, guys? Some of you guys already know. Some of you guys don't know. But guess what? I already have, I got my store up and running again. Again, go all the way to the top. Okay, go to my website and then go all the way to the top. And you see where it says store right here, all the way at the top, store. We can click on the store and look at that. Ba-bam. Now, I only got 3 t-shirts on there. Again, I just opened up the store the other day. It took me a long time to finally get a brand new store up and running and all that good stuff. But, slowly but surely, I'm going to be populating it with more t-shirts, more merchandise, and so on and so forth. So this is a fun and great way that you can help support the show. And you can also get something back in return. Like, for example, look at this t-shirt. I drew that. Yeah, that was me. I actually drew all that, all right, one day. All right, and I put it on a t-shirt, and there it is. All right, so that's one of the things that you can buy right now on my store. All right, so go check that out. All the links, I think I got links down below as well. All that good stuff. So, all right, let me see. Let me read a few comments here. By the way, thank you all so much for the kind words. Memo says, how do you make ranch from scratch? Oh, great. Easy. You get a package of Hidden Valley ranch, and I think you mix it with some buttermilk. I forgot. I don't know. I haven't made ranch in a long time. I really do not like ranch. In fact, the last time I made ranch from scratch was at a diner I used to work at, and that was, like 20 years ago, 15 years ago. I don't know. So, Memo says, that's not a good drawing. Take a picture instead. Oh, thank you, Memo. Thank you so much for the kind words. I really appreciate you. So, again, I understand it's not for everybody. You don't have to purchase, anything if you don't like it. So don't worry about it. But thank you so much. I appreciate, by the way, Memo, I know that you're out there trolling. You probably hate me. You're, all these negative thoughts. But I appreciate every time you leave a comment. It really helps the channel a lot. So thank you very much. You're doing a lot of help, for the channel. So, please, you and whoever else out there likes to troll, please feel free and always welcome, okay, to come out here and troll the chats, all right? So anyways, what was I going to say? Where were we? All right, let's get back to the... All right, hold on a second. I got a million windows here opened up. You like me? Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, Memo. Thank you so much. If you like me, I don't even want to see what my enemies do to me or feel about me. Ponte a trabajar, borracho. Oh my God. I am trabajando. And I'm not borracho. I don't like to drink that much, actually. I like to do other libations. Senor Joseph. Let me see. Let me see. What was I? I lost my train of thought. I know I was saying something. Oh, there we go. Okay, Alex Rubio says, very true, Jose. You have to detach from the customs and living ways of the USA. You have to set yourself. Well, you have to set yourselves to a new world and conditions. And I've been sitting my mind a ways from a mood to come. Oh man, I'm sorry. I've been sorry. I don't understand exactly what you were saying there. But yes, anyways, yes, you got to wrap your head around the fact that it's going to be a very different experience altogether. And look, this is another thing that I did not realize this until I moved out here. But the reality, and again, the longer I'm living here, the more I realize this. But this is something that I think a lot of you guys are starting to figure out as well. Mexico is not that different as the USA. In fact, it's just better in many cases. That's the real, that's the real reality of it, that Mexico is not that different. I've made many videos, and I'm going to be making more videos, to emphasize that. But again, I've shown you many parts of Mexico, and I'm sure you've seen them in other channels as well. But I did a video not that long ago, all right, where, in fact, let me see if I can get it real quick. Here, let me show you guys real quick the video I did not that long ago, so you guys can see exactly, what I'm talking about. In fact, I'll put that in the background. It'll probably be a lot better than this one. Hold on a second. I got to find it. It's a lot, anyway, so let me see. Where is this video? There it is. Okay, here we go. All right, check this out real quick. Oh, I got to resize it. Oh my God, there's so much. There's always so much I got to do. It's not that easy, a one-man band here. But anyways, all right, here we go. Boom. All right. So, as you guys can see, I did this video just a few weeks ago. Again, just showing you how very similar it is out here. Again, you see Burger King, Home Depot, you got Sam's Club, you got, everything. You got all this, you got Office Max, Office Depot, the pet store, you got the banks, you got Walmart, you got Costco, you got McDonald's, you got, Walgreens. That place back there almost looked like a Walgreens. Anyways, but you got everything here. You got every single thing. Again, if you watch this video, you see eventually I bump into a Tesla dealership, right next to a Cadillac dealership, and they have everything here. Okay, they have every single thing here. Where I happen to live, I live in the area, that's more like just a regular working class neighborhood, the older part of the city. I live close to the center, close to downtown, close to the center of the city. This is in the northern part of the city. This is like, there's some money, the people in these areas, they're 95%, 90% are Mexicans, that live in these areas, or, basically, shop in these areas and do their day-to-days in these areas, and they live a very similar life to the life that you live in the USA, except except with all the crap, that you have in the USA, meaning, there's no drug addicts on the street, there's no one begging for change, there's no, police officers, there, at the end of the street, with a speed trap, there's no, Karens running around making your life miserable. There's none of that stuff, It's just basically, the same exact thing as the USA, just better. Just think of what the USA was like 30, 40 years ago. All right. So this is out here. This is only like a 20-minute drive in traffic, from where I'm living right now. All right. That's it. And where I live right now, well, you guys know where I live right now. You guys watch my other videos, the one that I publish on Tuesday, the one that I publish on Sunday, the one that I publish every other day here. You get to see in those videos, all right. Basically, what a lot of Mexicans live like. What a typical working class neighborhood looks like. What all that looks like. Now, for a lot of people out there, you guys see videos like this, like what you're watching at right now, and you're like, oh, great, wonderful. I'm gonna move to Mexico. I'm gonna move to Merida, whatever, and I'm gonna live in that area. I'm gonna live in an area just like that. But when you move to an area just like this, then you quickly realize, oh, wait a minute, things are just almost as expensive or they're going to cost me the same as they cost me in the USA. So for a lot of people that are just looking into moving to Mexico to save a few bucks, well, that's probably not going to work out for you. Again, not everybody. I get it. If you're retired and you're only getting like $1,500, $2,000 a month, well, yeah, I get it. You know what I mean? You have a set income. And obviously that money, you're not going to get more money every month. And as things get more expensive all over the world, well, you're probably looking for a place that's not as expensive, okay? So I understand that. But for a lot of you guys out there that are still in, like me, working class, you're still working. Now, all of a sudden, you move to Mexico and you realize very quickly that, hey, if you want to live the same exact lifestyle as you lived in the USA, it's probably going to cost you very similarly. Obviously it's going to cost you less, but it's going to be very similar in cost. And then on top of that, you're going to also realize that whatever job you have, you're not going to get paid as much. When you're living in the USA, you get paid a lot more in many cases for many careers. Well, because everything's more expensive there. But once you become a digital nomad, or once you can do your job elsewhere, or if you get a job in Mexico, all right, let's say you get a job at a corporation here in Mexico, well, you're going to be getting paid. Obviously, you're going to get paid a lot compared to other Mexicans, but you're still going to get paid a lot less than where you're going to get paid in the USA. So, like, that's the thing. Eventually, like I said, for a lot of people, they just want to replicate their life that they had back home. That's when you quickly realize, oh, wait a minute, this is going to be just as expensive or more expensive, or relatively the same. You know what I mean? Just a tiny bit of savings when you move to Mexico. And so for a lot of people, well, that's not enough. You're not just moving to Mexico for, to just, make the same amount of money or make less amount of money. So why is it that a lot of people are moving to Mexico? All right. Well, again, because of stress. There's a lot less stress out here. There's a higher quality of life out here. You get more bang for your buck. Because, for example, if I live in the area that you're looking at right now, man, I need to be making a lot more money than what I make now. But since I only make around $1,000 to $1,500 a month, then I have to live where I live, which is, again, with the working class people of the city. And again, even where I live right now, and even in the house that I'm living in right now, I'm paying a lot more than many locals are paying, to live the life that I'm living. All right. But yet, because I live in the particular neighborhood that I live in, well, I don't have to go to Sam's Club or Costco or the big fancy grocery store every day and pay those prices. I can literally just walk down the end of the block and get some tacos, for dinner for $5, $6, $10 tops. You know what I mean? Me and the wife. I can go down the other block and I can visit the little tiendita, the little corner store, and I can get my fruits, my vegetables, everything there. I can get a butcher, have a butcher, again, another block away or 2 blocks away. I can go to that butcher, or I can have a specialty butcher that I've, my own specialty butcher that I found after many years of being out here. And then they bring the meat to my house, and so on and so forth. And again, it's fresh, fresh fruits and vegetables, fresh meat, fresh everything, the higher quality of food, the higher quality of life, the higher quality of just about everything. But the thing is that, in order for you to get the highest quality of everything, quality of life, quality of food, quality of whatever, then and you don't make that much money, then you got to make sacrifices elsewhere. So for me, since I don't make that much money, but I don't want to sacrifice, the quality of the food. I don't want to sacrifice my quality of life. I don't want to sacrifice a bunch of these things. This is why I live where I live. You understand? So that's the thing. It just depends on the individual and the person, that's out there looking into moving out here. Now, obviously, if you're making a lot of money, and you have a really good job and you can transfer all of that out here, well, yeah, most likely you're going to be living up here in the north. I got tons of friends that live up here in the north, and they live in these mega mansions, and they're paying like $2,000 in rent. Where back in Miami or Philadelphia or LA, $2,000 rent, you'd be lucky if you get a 1-bedroom apartment, So it just, just to give you, seriously, you see the Sherwin-Williams right above my head. I know people who live in houses that big, and they pay like around $2,000 a month. Come on, give me a break, all right? So, but that's the thing, for example, I pay $650, for a 3-bedroom home. All right. Before I lived here, I was paying $350, $400, for a smaller home that was falling apart. All right. So, there's a lot of work that goes into, moving out here and finding exactly what you want. You know how long it took us, to find this particular home? It took us months and months of looking and looking and looking to finally find this place. And it's not like a lot of people just have the misconception that they can just come out to Mexico and then they're just gonna, like just go to a couple rentals and that's it. They're gonna find their dream home and they're gonna find their dream everything. A lot of people, have a lot of misconceptions, as to what life out here is like. But the reality is again, as you guys can see from this video, it's not that, it's not that different from what you might be seeing, back home. Except the fact that, again, there's a lot less stress. There's a lot less garbage on the street. There's a lot less, by garbage, I don't just mean, a candy wrapper or a soda can on the side of the road. I mean garbage, literally, garbage people all over the place. Out here, it's not like that at all. Out here, it is completely different. And so for a lot of people, they've already realized as the years have gone on that, Mexico's not as affordable as it used to be. It's still very affordable, but a lot of people are moving to Mexico for a completely different reason these days. And so that's why you guys are willing to put in that work and that effort to make your way out of there. Because, one thing that I've noticed, and some of you guys have noticed as well, because I've read the comments and you guys leave it in the comments, right? And some of you guys have told me straight up that for the demographics have changed dramatically. Years ago, the only people that would come out here to Mexico or to live abroad were basically retired folks or the hippy dippy people, the hippy dippy traveler that basically, lives out of his book bag, goes from hostel to hostel, and so on and so forth. So it was just those two kinds of people. All right. The dirty hippie and the retired individual out there. That's about it. But as the years have gone on, well, things have changed dramatically. There's less and less retired folk coming out here. And there's more and more, people my age coming out here, more and more families coming out here, again, single guys, single women, leaving the USA, dissatisfied with life out there. They're moving out here. So there's so many, people that are moving out here, and the demographics have been changing dramatically. And to add even more to that, and especially this past year, I cannot believe we're already in late September here. But anyways, one thing that's happened this year in particular is the fact that, with everything going on in the USA, with the deportations and all that stuff, well, there's more and more Mexicans that are moving out here. So there's Mexicans that are moving out here that are just like you. Again, there's tons of people out there in the audience that are exactly like you, only they were born in Mexico and they were brought to the USA when they were young, or they were born in the USA, but their parents are from Mexico. And for those people, it's even easier to move out here. Again, some of you guys are in the chat, in the comment section there, and you guys are basically letting everybody in the audience know how much easier it is for you to move out here, because you already have family out here. You already got friends out here. You might already, you might just be going back to your hometown. Obviously it's the same culture for some of you guys, same language, and I could go on and on. And so we're seeing a lot more Mexicans moving out here, some that have been deported, okay, some that have self-deported, and some just like us that have had enough. They just had enough of the American dream. They've had enough of the USA, Canada, whatever, for whatever the reason. There's many reasons, right, these days. And then, it's a lot easier for them to move back, to just basically abandon or get rid of all their stuff in the USA and then just move back to Mexico, move to Mexico. Some Mexicans have never even really been to Mexico. But it's been a lot easier, and there's been a lot more of that in the recent years. So, in this particular year. Now, it's something that's kind of been going on, for a few years, but especially in this last year, the year of 2025. Oh my gosh, you know what I mean? And in the case of my channel, it's actually helped, a lot in the sense of because again, YouTube has put out a brand new thing, a brand new feature, with their channel where it has and now allows you, the audience, to watch videos in whatever language you want. And so you guys already know I've even made a few videos in Spanish, and they get translated to English. But with that said, you guys already know most of my videos, in fact, all of my videos are in English. But guess what? They're translated into Spanish. And so again, a lot of Mexicans, a lot of Latinos, they're in the USA and Canada, are watching my videos, and they're watching them in Spanish. And well, again, a lot of people out there, again, including Latinos, me included. Again, my parents are Cuban. Yo hablo español. Es mi primer idioma. So we all had this misconception as to what Mexico was, what Mexico is. Mexico, right? All the misconceptions is, it's dangerous out here. There's cartel members everywhere. Everyone's living in a third world country. There's no cars. Everybody's on a donkey. Whatever. All the stereotypes. But then, again, look at the video. Look where I'm walking right now. There's just one tiny area in the city, and it looks exactly like the USA. Or Canada. You know what I mean? So it's very, very similar. So to a lot of people, by watching my videos alone, that has helped a lot of you guys and basically realize, oh, wait a minute. I'm not missing anything at all by moving to Mexico. In fact, things are a million times better over there because I get to see Jose's videos or other people's videos that are showing what Mexico actually looks like, what it really, really looks like, okay? Now, again, I happen to live out here in Mérida, Yucatan, and this is why most of my videos are centered around this city and this area, because this is where I live. I live in the state of the Yucatan. But, I have traveled many places, and recently last year, we were in Guadalajara, and my gosh, I was blown away, by what an amazing city that was, because it was it's a city that is very, very, very modern and very rich, a lot of money, but at the same time, you'll go to the center of the city, and you're gonna find you're gonna find out very quickly that, oh my God, there's buildings here that have been here 500 years. Man, this is another insane thing. When people look at the history, as to of this region, not only do they have all these pyramids and, all these ruins, archaeological ruins that have been here, for God knows how long, right? But on top of that, you got to remember when the Spanish landed here, it was in the early 1500s, and they were already building cathedrals. They were already building cities. They were already building mega structures out here, when in the USA, the Pilgrims still didn't even land on Plymouth Rock, okay? There was still, the English still didn't even land in the 13 colonies of the Americas, all right? By the time that, Mexico and this whole region was already built up. So, it is pretty hilarious to see, because that's another thing too, a lot of misconceptions. A lot of people think, look at the Tesla right there, So obviously, not only do they have a Tesla parked right there, but you can buy your own Tesla truck. You can buy your own Tesla whatever. There's Teslas all over the place. Now, obviously, not as much as the USA these days, but I'm just saying, everything is out here. But what I was going to say is that, a lot of people have the misconception that, for example, everything that you just saw in my walk, in this video so far, the malls, the Walmart, the Office Depot, the Home Depot, a lot of people think that all that was built 2 days ago, 5 years ago? No, a lot of these things have been built decades and decades and decades ago. Look, the Walmart that's on Paseo Montejo, that if you're ever going to come out here as a tourist, or you're out here visiting, and you're staying in that, touristy area of the center of the city, you're going to have, there's a Walmart that's right there on Paseo Montejo, all right? And for me, my dumbass, I thought, oh my God, that they built that Walmart, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, they built that not that long ago. Only to quickly find out that, oh no, that's the first Walmart that was ever built in the city. There's 10 Walmarts here, and that Walmart was built 30 or 35 years ago. I'm like, what? 30 years ago? So, again, they've had all of these things here that they've had in the USA the same amount of time, So that's the thing. That's the reality, of the situation. Mexico is not that different. But at the end of the day, it's think about it. Even if you're leaving Chicago and you're moving to Vancouver, Canada, Well, it comes with a lot of things. You know what I mean? You got to learn the culture, even though it's very similar. You might be okay because everyone speaks English. You speak English, right? But at the end of the day, you're gonna find out. Again, you're moving to Canada and you want to become a Canadian citizen. You want to go through all that. You're gonna realize how difficult it is. Well, it's the same thing if you're moving to Mexico. Remember, you're the immigrant now, and it's funny because the other day someone left a comment in one of my videos, which kind of made me chuckle a little bit. But it was someone that left like 2 or 3 comments on the video, and they were really upset. They were just so upset when they were basically telling me in the comment, "Oh, I don't know, why you make these videos. You're one of the privileged few that was able to, pay your way out of the USA. There's a lot of us out here in the USA that don't have any money, that don't have any this, that don't have any resource, don't have whatever." And I'm thinking to myself, first of all, I came out here with nothing, right? So I was in the same situation or a worse situation than the person leaving that comment. But the reality is that when I came out here with nothing, I moved to another country with nothing, and I knew that I had to start from the beginning. Well, I already right from the get-go, I had the immigrant mentality. Now, again, my parents were immigrants. They achieved the American dream. They went through all that. Again, coming from Miami, there's immigrants from all over the world, all over Latin America living down there, and all the struggles that all immigrants have to go through, no matter what country you're going to, right? So I was already well prepared for that. And so I've always had that immigrant mentality. And so obviously, I know things are going to be difficult. I know things, are going to be even more difficult being an immigrant with no resources. But I was able to make it out okay. In fact, not only was I able to make it out okay, but what about the millions and millions of immigrants that flood into the USA, that flood into Canada, all the time, on a daily basis still at this point. And they come with nothing. They come with even less than nothing. They don't have $1,500. They don't even have, they barely have the clothes on their back. And yet, they're able to not only survive, but thrive. So that's the thing too, It's like, a lot of people, they're not even prepared to help themselves. A lot of people are, I even get questions all the time. It's like, "Hey, Jose, when I get to Mexico, how do I apply for food stamps? How do I apply for benefits? How do I apply?" It's like, no, they don't have food stamps. They don't have benefits. They don't have any of that stuff. You got to figure it out on your own. Now, again, for me, why was it easy? Well, because I never applied for benefits in the USA. The only thing I ever applied for in the USA while I was living there was unemployment. At certain points in my career, when I had the opportunity to get unemployment, that's it. But other than that, I never gotten food stamps. I never got no free government check. I don't get any of that stuff. But there's many people in the USA that get all kinds of benefits. They're on disability, they're on whatever, and obviously, they want to come out here and they want to keep using all that stuff, or they want to, again, keep living for free in a sense, and so that's the thing. The reality is that in order for you to, not just move to another country, but to really, take advantage of the benefits of living in another country, you got to put a lot of work into it. You got to put a lot of effort into it. It's not going to be easy. All right. It's just not. And, for some people, it'll be easier than others, but it's really just going to depend on you, the individual. So, hopefully, hopefully that makes some sense there. All right, hold on a second. Let me see if we can put another video. One second. Hold on a second. Where was I? Oh yeah. Yeah. Sorry. I just have so many things here. All right, let's just put this video back on here. So, all right, I'm gonna go on ahead and read some comments in the comment section. See what you guys have to say here. You got Gizmo out there barking. Hopefully, I don't think you guys can even hear him, but whatever. All right, let me see. Kang, the digital nomad globe trekker, says, "I would suggest people to speak Spanish as much as they can." I agree. Learn. And again, you don't have to be perfect at Spanish, but try. The more you try and the more you practice, the better you're going to get at it. And the more you're going to get out of life out here. Okay. Again, imagine moving to the USA and not speaking any English. It's not going to be that easy for you. Anyways, he says it helps to be at least a 1A or B2 Spanish speaker. It will make life so much easier. Exactly, yeah. Let me see. Kang says, wait, people are trying to get to go to another country and get asked for food stamps. Well, yeah, I mean, the audacity of people, again, wanting to come out to another country and then asking for benefits. But look, where does that come from? Where does that mentality come from? Well, simply because how many immigrants are allowed to come into the USA and Canada, all right, and they're given all kinds of free benefits just for coming in there. Again, for a lot of us that are U.S. citizens, we don't even get the benefits that a lot of immigrants were getting. And again, I don't know how things are these days with Trump in power, but still, we cannot, sugarcoat that or deny that's not a thing that happens. So that's the thing. It's also the mentality. A lot of people don't have the right mentality when it comes to moving to another country, to moving to, obviously to moving to Mexico in this case, because it's more like, well, you know what? If we treat immigrants a certain way here in the USA, well, then they got to treat me that same way when I go to their country. And that's not how it works at all. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to find out very quickly that there are no benefits. There are no help. There is no nothing. You know what I mean? In fact, the only help you're going to get is that they allow you to stay here. So it is what it is. By the way, so yeah, if you have any questions or anything you want me to answer, go on ahead and ask me some questions. All right, we're gonna just see we can answer. What is it? Lightning round. Answer some questions. I see Jonathan that says, if Mexico is fine, why do people try so hard to cross the border, so hard to the USA? Oh, it's very easy. That's a great question. Because look, at the end of the day, it's just all about mathematics. Remember, a lot of people are moving to Mexico simply to save money. So think about it. If you're a Mexican, okay, and you live out here and you already have a pretty good life, there's only one thing that you would want to make better, and that is making more money. And all you got to do is go to another country or get a job abroad, and you make more money, and that money you're bringing all the way back home. Well, then wouldn't you do it too? Like, for example, look, this is the example I give everybody in the USA right now. If you're in the USA right now and everything is great except for one thing, that you don't make enough money doing your job, and then somebody basically offers you, hey, let me see who asked me that. Jonathan, right? Was it Jonathan? It was like, hey, Jonathan, I got something for you. If you move to Germany for 2 years and you work for this company, you could make 3 times, 4 times the amount of money that you're making at the same job in Wisconsin right now. And not only are you going to be making 4 times the amount in Germany, but when you're in Germany, you don't have to pay for food. You don't got to pay for housing. You don't got to pay for a lot of these things, because the German government is going to give all these things to you. So all of the money that you're making from that job, you're going to be able to pocket that money and do whatever you want with it. Now, some people, they'll move to Germany for the job and they'll stay in Germany. And some people, they're just going to look at that opportunity and be like, oh my God, I get to make 4 times the amount, working for this company in Germany. And I get to bring all that money back to the USA so I can build my dream home, so I can build my dream business, so I can really thrive out here in the USA. Most people would do it. In fact, a lot of people do it. In fact, the biggest employer of the USA is the government or the military, right? That's the same thing, right? You sign up for the military, you get a lot of money, but you got to go, do some stuff abroad, or for example, what was I going to say? Man, I lost my train of thought. I had a brain fart there. What was I saying about the job opportunity? Man, I can't believe I... Anyways, but that's what most people do, okay? That's really the mathematics behind it, all right? And so that's why, obviously, at this point, again, it's getting less and less each and every day. That's why you're seeing, the people that are crossing the border. Like, for example, if you're a Mexican that lives on the border, well, then it's easy for you to cross back and forth, all right? And do your job over there. Also, if you know that the only penalty that you're going to get in the USA is get deported, and then you're going to come right back and keep doing that job, you're going to keep doing it. So look, the reality is that the incentive the people get incentivized because of money. That's it. Oh yeah, what I was going to say is that in the USA, there's tons of people that do these jobs. Right now you can get a job at a cruise ship. You can get a job, working on an oil rig. I mean, I got friends of mine, that basically what they do is they work 6 months out of the year in an oil rig, very far away from where their family is. But they make so much money on that oil rig that they get to take the other 6 months off. So they'll go work for 6 months and make a lot of money. They'll come back, get to live off of that. And then at the same time, that's the thing. That's the way you got to look at it. You know what I mean? Like, I totally understand what you're saying, Jonathan, but that's the reality of it. So again, in the USA right now, if you're an immigrant coming from any country out there, right now the USA is offering jobs, offering housing, offering, food stamps, offering, you already know. They'll put you up in a fancy hotel. I mean, depending on the city, depending on how you come in, but whatever, because a lot of people argue, that, now that Trump's in power, that the border's closed and nobody's coming in. Listen, I can show you video after video after video, happening right now where there's plenty of parts all across the Mexico-U.S. border where people are still flooding in just like they were under Biden, all right? So I don't want to hear that. All right, but long story short, that's the reason. But what I'm saying is that, what you see from a lot of these videos is that a lot of the people that are they're going into the USA these days are people coming from India, people coming from, really, really, really impoverished parts of the world, people that are leaving, war-torn countries, and I could go on and on. You're not seeing that many Mexicans per se, unless, again, they already have whatever Mexican is going to the USA to work these days, they already know. In fact, they don't even care if they get deported, because if they get deported, it's a lot easier. It's a lot cheaper, than if they had to fly back. They just get a free flight back. In fact, that's like a running joke out here too, for a lot of Mexicans. It's just like, yeah, well, whatever. We get deported, it means we get a free flight back home, so. Mason Lifestyle says, I believe that the average Mexican makes $500 to $700 a month. It depends. Look, you got to remember that those are official numbers collected by the government. But if by living out here, that 65, 70, 75% of the working population doesn't even register with the government, because they don't pay taxes, they don't declare how much they make. They all work in the informal economy, meaning, for example, how many people just sell tacos on the side corner of the street and they collect and they pay, and all their payments are in cash. So for example, a typical Mexican might have a little taco stand at the front of their house or at the corner of the block, and all they do is collect cash. They're not paying taxes. They're not in the official numbers. They're definitely making a lot more than $500 a month. In fact, there's another running joke that, there's plenty of people that get, they'll go to college out here in Mexico. They'll become a psychologist. They'll become a doctor. They'll become a lawyer. They'll become a whatever, an architect, right? And within a few years, they're selling tacos, on the street, simply because, they thought that if they became a lawyer, they're going to be able to drive a Corvette or a Ferrari or, have a nice house, only to quickly realize that the guy that's actually, driving the Corvette with the nice house, with, their kids in private school is the guy that owns a taco stand or various taco stands. All right. So that's another thing too. It's going back to when you trying to leave the USA, it's all those things that, every single American and Canadian citizen, you're all tied into the grid. You're tied into the digital grid. Out here in Mexico, that's like an option. Most people are not even, on the digital grid. A lot of Mexicans don't even have bank accounts. In fact, things that I was talking about in recent videos and stuff like that, where now the Mexican president, is doing all kinds of things, to tax people on their bank accounts, to tax people on this, to, again, just suck out more money, from the population. And you know what the population has said? What most Mexicans say? It's like, I knew it. I knew it. I knew I shouldn't have done that digital whatever. I knew I shouldn't have used that credit card. I knew I shouldn't have gotten that bank account. You know what? I'm going to abandon all that and I'm going straight back to cash. You know? So, I mean, it's a different world out here, you know? It's a different, situation out here. So, crappy gamer mom. What's crappy gamer mom? I see her spamming the chat. What's she saying? Yes, right. Under the table money. That's what it's called. I mean, look, I know doctors out here that will tell you straight up, like, hey, cash only. You know what I mean? They don't even want to, they don't want to pay taxes either. All right. So anywho's, but that's the thing, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of things that have to, a lot of people have to wrap their heads around. A lot of people out there, they moved to Mexico from the U.S. or Canada, and all they're worried about is how they're going to pay taxes. It's like, what do you mean, man? Like 70% of the Mexican population doesn't even pay taxes. Why are you so worried about that? You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. It's just so many little things, and so. You got to remember, for a lot of you guys out there leaving the USA and Canada, that you're moving into a completely different country, a country that is not that connected to the government. Okay, the government out here is not as powerful as it is in our own countries. They don't have the enforcement ability to enforce, all kinds of draconian laws and all kinds of rules and regulation on the people. They don't have anything. They don't have any power like they do in our home countries. And that's the thing too. That's what a lot of people. It's very difficult to wrap their heads around too, because it's like they'll move to Mexico and all of a sudden, the advice that they get, from Mexicans, or the advice they get from my channel, or people like me, doesn't really, connect with the way that they're used to living their life. So, for example, the way that I was born and raised in Miami. Miami is nothing like the rest of the USA. Miami is like Latin America. The government out there is like, you know what I mean? Like, people just do whatever they want. It's a different planet living in Miami. So that's why when I came out to Mexico, I was like, oh, this is great. The rules, regulation, laws, all these things. Of course we have them, but they're not as strict as they are when you're in other parts of the world, like, again, the USA and Canada. And so for a lot of people that come from very, very strict parts of the country, or very strict parts of the world, you come out to Mexico and you cannot wrap your head around the whole idea that, how is it that all of these people in this monster country are living in anarchy? I thought that you needed to pay taxes, to have a street, to pay for this, to pay for that. How come people here don't pay taxes, don't follow the rules, don't do this, don't do that, don't whatever? In fact, the cops don't even have that much power. So how is it that this whole country can function with anarchy? Because they've told us that you need all these police, all these all these politicians, you need all these rules and regulations, you need the HOA, you need this and that. Why is it? Why is it that, like, I just moved to this country and all of a sudden they live without rules? I thought you couldn't do that. I thought that people would kill each other, day to day, just because there's no rules. But the reality is that that's not how it works at all. There's a lot of unwritten rules, and there's a lot of rules of society out here. And long story short, trust me, you do something bad, you're going to get dealt with. All right? It's just not going to be getting dealt with like you get dealt with in the USA or Canada. So, all right. Let me read some questions. I know I'll go off on my rants. Mason Lifestyle says, okay, I'm going to try again. Jose, quick question. Do you know how much e-bikes cost on daily rentals? I don't know. I do not know. I don't know if they rent e-bikes. I know they rent regular bikes. And to rent a regular bike, it just depends. Probably just $1, $2, $5. So I don't know. I don't know what to rent an electric bike. I don't even know. I don't know if they even have that available here in Merida. I don't know if they have that available really. But if you're talking about renting a bike, just renting one of those bikes, one of those city bikes, again, I still don't know what the price is on that, because I never had to rent one because I always have my own bike. So, but yeah, sorry, Mason. I don't have that. But like, for example, if you go out every Sunday in Merida, and every Sunday in many major cities around Mexico, they have this thing called the BC Ruta, bicycle route. And basically they close a good portion of the city or the historical center, and people, they go out and they ride their bikes, or if they don't have a bike, they can rent a bike from a bunch of vendors out there, and then you can just rent one of those bikes and whatever. And then on top of that, if you just, let's say you want to rent a bicycle on a Tuesday, some of those vendors are out there, but also they have those city bikes. Those bikes that you get your phone and you click the QR code and you put the thing and you get to rent the bike and whatever. So they got that, but I just don't know what the price are. But I'm sure it's only like $1, a couple bucks. Can't be more than that. So yeah, if I'm riding around in my own e-bike, yeah, I bought my e-bike. I bought mine. I don't rent it. I bought mine. Okay. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know what you're asking me, man. Like, it's like, no worries, mate. I'll order one from Amazon, or yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? If you want an e-bike, you're gonna have to buy your own. I don't think they rent them. As far as I know, I could be wrong. If there's anyone that has information on this, please let us know. But as far as I know, electric bikes, you don't rent, or they don't have them for rent. Oh, there you go. There you go. Susie says Progresso has e-bikes for about $30 a day. There you go. There you go. So there you go. Isai. Yeah. Anyway, Isai says Jose riding his bike in Merida. Look, there's the bike lane points from the car lane and keeps going. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, the bike lanes out here have much to be desired, sometimes. So the bike lanes are very new. Bike lanes are something we just got a couple years ago, and it's a mess. They got bike lanes all over the city, and none of them connect. And a lot of times, like I said, people just park their cars, on the bike lane because they used to be a parking spot. All right, but whatever. Again, that's a thing. It's about living out. It's the things about living out here. I don't have to ride on the bike lane if I don't want to. People can park their car on the bike lane if they want to. They're not going to get a ticket for the most part. A lot of times they're just going to get a police officer like, hey, move your car, get out of here. Even assuming they even get that at all. So, but yeah, again, it's things like that. Where in the USA, you got cops that are basically just looking to give everybody a ticket. They're looking to even give me a ticket on a bicycle. They're looking to give you a ticket, for walking, down the street, for jaywalking, for crying out loud, whatever, So, Soren says, have I ever visited Islas Mujeres? I have not. I have not visited that area yet. But at some point I'll make my way out there. I got pretty close. We went to Valladolid a couple weeks ago. Antonio says, stupid question. If police stop me, can I just not comply and will they just go away? No, not necessarily. Like, how it works is like this. If you know your Constitution, you know your rights, and you speak fluent Spanish, then yes, you can have a conversation with the cops. The same conversation that people try to have in the USA, before they get pulled out of the car, arrested, shot, whatever. Okay, so in Mexico, long story short, there are corrupt cops, there are regular cops, whatever, and they'll pull you over, okay, or they'll stop you, while you're driving, and, depending on what part of Mexico you're in, depending on, what the situation is going to be. But look, long story short, always demand a ticket. If they're telling you, hey, listen, I pulled you over because, you were speeding, or, I pulled you over because you're a broken taillight, whatever it is, you just say, okay, no problem. I'm sorry for the infraction. Can you just write me the ticket? And depending on where you're at, they'll write you the ticket. Or what they're going to say is that, hey, you know what? I don't want to write you the ticket. You seem like a good guy. What we can do is that we can just settle this right now. The ticket's going to cost you like 2,000 pesos. But if you give me like 500 pesos right now, we can take care of it. If you come across that, do not engage and just tell them, no, give me the ticket. Give me the ticket. Give me the ticket. Many times they'll leave you alone. And again, a lot of times, like I said, the more fluent in Spanish you are and the ballsier you are, the more you can confront police. I've confronted cops multiple times in my years out here. I've never had a problem. The only time I've really never confronted them was when I was driving because that's a different scenario. But I've never really had a problem either way because, out here in this region, the cops are, normal cops. So they just gave me a ticket. That's it. They did not ask me for insurance. I give them my expired California license, and that's it. Now, obviously, it was my car. I owned the car, and they were just checking to see whether it was my car or not. That's it. Registered to me, and it was, and that's it. They just gave me the ticket. I was on my way. No big deal. But the reality is that, in many cases, yes, technically, you can talk your way out of an infraction, okay? But that's, again, assuming that, the infraction they pulled you over for, they really have no proof, for them to really give you a ticket for, or, they're corrupt cops and they just want to, get a mordida, aka they want, what's the word I'm looking for? They want you to pay them off. What's the word I'm looking for? Bribe. They want a bribe, okay? But I would not, like I said, when you're driving a car, it gets a little dicey, and especially if you don't know any Spanish. But if you're walking around, if you are, basically anything but driving a car, yeah, they cannot bother you at all. And like I said, I have encountered a few cops in my travels. I remember one time years ago, I was out with my buddies. We were celebrating something. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. We were all drunk and we were at a bar and we had like a bunch of cops show up to the bar. And basically, they were trying to extort the business, okay, by basically telling the business owner, hey, you better pay us our fee, because if you don't pay us our fee, we're going to disturb all of the people here at the bar. So the owner did not pay the fee. And so basically the cops, they turned on all the lights and they started, harassing all the customers at the bar. Basically asking for, hey, can I see your ID to see if you're legal, to be drinking here? Now, obviously, everyone's, looking like me or something, whatever. So, again, there's no youngsters in there, whatever. Anyways, long story short, everyone, as the cops went from table to table, everybody complied. And then when they finally came to my table, my friends, they give them the ID, they give them whatever. And then when they came to me, he goes, hey, so where's your ID? I'm like, excuse me? In Spanish. I'm talking in Spanish. I'm like, excuse me? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, where's your ID? Didn't you hear me the first time? I'm like, yeah, I heard you. But, as far as I understand, it's not legal. It is not illegal for me to not have my ID on me. Am I right or am I wrong? No, yeah, but still, if I'm asking you for your ID, I'm like, I don't give a crap what you're asking me for. You know what I mean? You have no right to come in here and ask not just me for my ID, but anyone for your ID. Whatever problem you got with the business owner and whatever extortion situation you're doing with the business owner, that's between you and them. Okay? And if you're going to, and if you want to harass all these people in the bar, that's up to you and them. But you don't have to harass me. All right? I know my laws. I know the Constitution. I speak Spanish. I know whatever. I don't got to give you nothing. So I don't know what the hell you're talking about. You know what I mean? How dare you even demand me give you any kind of identification? I'm in a private establishment. And, as soon as I went on that, basically the police officer was like, oh, hey, man, you don't got to get all, you don't got to get all aggressive and get mad. I'm just doing this for your protection. I'm like, for my protection? That's when you know me. I'm not an authority guy. I don't like authority. I'm like, what the hell? What the fuck? You know what I mean? What do you mean my protection? I'm protected. I'm here with my friend. I was with Tree. Tree. Tree's like 6'8". He's like a bit. Listen, I was like, I'm protected. All right. If anything, I'm the problem here. All right. So don't worry about it. All right. I don't need an ID. If I get too drunk or get too stupid, I got my friends here, to help me out. They'll bring me back home. They'll whatever. Okay. So I'm in good hands. I appreciate you caring about me, but I don't need you to care about me. I'm a grown ass adult. All right. I got gray hairs on my beep. I don't need you, all right, to tell me how to whatever. All right, long story short. And then long story short, basically the cop ended up apologizing to me and said, look, my apologies, and then eventually my friend was like, hey, bro, all right, come on, man, just let it go. Remember, I already had a few drinks in me. And so I was like, all right, hey, you know what? My apologies. I'm sorry. All right, I was just exercising my rights. Okay, and I know fully well what they are. And again, I understand that not everybody does, and you just go and do your thing, and I'm going to be doing my thing. and that's it. Yeah, because when I was fighting with the cops, I was like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to kick me out of the establishment? What are you going to do? Drag me out of here? I know you're not going to arrest me. I know you're not going to this. I know you're not going to that. So what are we doing here? What are we doing here? And then, that's when everything just kind of started to calm down. So look, long story short, that's a situation that I was in. In the 7.5 years that I've been here, I have never, ever once, been confronted by a police officer, while I'm riding my bike, while I'm walking around, while I'm driving my car. None of that, basically to shake me down like they do in the USA. Ever. Like I said, the only time I've ever gotten a problem, is like a few times when I was driving my truck. That death trap that was a truck that I had. I got pulled over a few times for obvious reasons. But again, just a little slap on the wrist, if that, and gone. In fact, a lot of times when I was driving my truck, I would get police officers waving me down. And basically, they were just like, hey, man, that's a cool truck. And same thing that happens to me on my bike. Sometimes they'll see me riding around my bike, and immediately they'll do like a double take because they think I'm riding a motorcycle. And they're like, hey, man, how come that guy doesn't have a tag? And then he's like, they see me with the pedals, and they're like, oh, okay. And then they'll pull me, pull next to me, or they see me and they'll talk to me like, hey, nice bike. It's a cool bike. Where'd you get the bike? Whatever. That's it. So it's a different animal out here. But I forgot what I was saying. I forgot what the question was. But yeah, long story short, like, do not be confronting police or authority out here, especially if you don't know your rights, especially if you probably did something wrong. And especially if you don't know any Spanish, because listen, they can make it. We're in Mexico at the end of the day, all right. And I've heard stories, all right. But again, other than that, you're fine. I felt so much more safe out in Mexico. And it doesn't matter where I've been, whether Guadalajara, Oaxaca, Mexico City, Merida. When it comes to like police and authority. Yeah, no, I feel a gazillion times safer than I would in the USA. In the USA, you're always scared of what could happen next. Yeah. So, all right. I think that's it. All right, let me see. Brett Lopez says, Jose, a while back you had a guy on doing business with a Dutch bank. May I have his contact info? Yes, that video that you watch, all his contact info. I don't have the contact info on me right now. Go to that video, and the contact info is right there. Okay, it's in the description. All right. Also, I did a video with him in that bank. Okay, that's going to be published next week, so you guys have more info. Okay, on that. Okay, so I know a lot of people had a lot of questions, and you guys wanted a lot more information on the bank and everything that Matt was doing and yada, yada, yada. So again, I'm going to be providing that. I'm providing more information because I went on ahead and I did a small video, an interview with them, so you guys can get more info on that. But look, let me, hold on. Where was I? What was I going to do? I think, hold on. I was going to do something real quick. Oh yeah. Okay. So look, this is a great way for you guys to check out, find the videos. Again, so right now, Brett is asking for a video that I did very recently. So you just go to my page, my YouTube page, and right there where it says videos, you click on videos. Okay? See, videos, and then you just scroll down a little bit. Boop, 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 and there it is. There he is. There's a video I did with Matt. Okay, you see? It's right there. Right there. Right there. See it? Fact here, there, it's right next to me, right there. You see it? Right there, right next to Lambo. So you just click on the video, and again, this is for all videos. Okay, please, for example, you click on the video. Okay, and as soon as you click on the video, right here where it says description, you click on description, and there it is. Look, there's his email. There's his information. Okay. I cannot post certain things in the chat. That's why I can't post like emails and stuff like that. But anyways, just go in, and there it is. Okay. There's his email. Okay. And for example, like a lot of people are like, oh, I love that house that you showed with Jose the other day. Can I get more information? Yes, in the description. Look, you got this. You click on the video right there. Boom, and you go straight to the listing. Okay. And you got his website, and you got his email, and you got everything there. Okay. So please, guys, look in the description of all my videos. I got tons of information. Okay, in the description. Okay. It's not just what I say in the video. All right. So, okay. So I think that's it, guys. I think I gotta get out of here because we're gonna go live on the other channel, okay, in about 30 minutes. All right. So I'll see you guys over there. But before we go, again, remember I got my store up and running. We're going to have more t-shirts and more merchandise up there soon. Again, I just opened the store up again a couple days ago. It took a long time, for me to get rid of the other store and move on to the new store. But long story short, again, now with the new store, I'm now able to offer you guys lower prices for basically the same t-shirt. My t-shirts before, I think they were like $25. So now I'm able to, make them for less. And so obviously sell them for less. Okay. So we can all benefit from it. Okay. So long story short, we're going to be adding more stuff there and all that good stuff. And then my other channel, Jose Unleashed. Again, we're going to go live over there in about 30 minutes. Again, as soon as I'm done here, I'm going to take a quick break so I can refresh my brain, and then we're going to go over there, and I hope to see you guys over there. And also, one last thing I wanted to say, there's like a brand new thing that YouTube has added to videos. It's so far, from my understanding, it's only available on mobile. So if you watch me, okay, on the mobile, on your cell phone, there's a new thing called Hype. You can hype up a channel. And long story short, I still don't know what it does. Everyone's still trying to figure out what it does. But supposedly, the people at YouTube are saying that it's really good. It's almost like leaving a like or better, or like a subscribe or whatever. It's like another version of subscription or a like, where let's say you like the video a lot. You get to hype up the video, and when you hype up the video, it gives a signal to YouTube to recommend it to even more people. Okay, so there's a new thing that they're rolling out. So again, if you want to hype up the channel, you want to hype up certain videos, to get them, to more people to watch, please do that. That'd be great. And again, if you want to help support the show, again, we got the store. We're starting to populate with stuff. And again, if you need any kind of information, free information, okay. Again, you got my channel, okay. You got my channel where you can, find all kinds of videos. Again, right here at the top where the search, you see the search, you get to type in anything. Let's say jobs. Okay, you type jobs and you get, whatever. So whatever it is. Anyways, long story short, you got my YouTube page, and you got my actual website, josearteaga.com. And when you go to my actual website, you get all kinds of free information. Again, moving to Mexico, general information. You already know what's down there. If you're moving to Merida, or you're coming to visit Merida, you're Merida information. I got another link right there. If you want to help support the show, again, I got the links right there. I got the link to the store as well. Okay, and then if you want to do a personalized consultation, again, for a lot of you guys out there, I totally understand. Time is money, and you guys don't have that much time to sift through all my videos and listen to all of my babbling, just to get the information you need. So for a lot of you guys, you don't have that much time, but you can afford to pay for a consultation. So again, for those of you guys out there that don't have that much time, but have some resources and you want to help the show and also help yourself out, you can you can hit me up. And we can set up a consultation, and you can ask me anything you want about anything. And basically, the consultation goes as long, okay, as it needs to be. Okay, it's not like a hard 1 hour time limit. Okay, it's basically, some people only need a consultation for 20 minutes. Some people need it for an hour and a half. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It all depends on the questions and depends on how long-winded I am with my answers. Okay. But you guys can set that up as well. And then some of you guys that have a few extra resources and you want to meet me, you can also set up a one-on-one in-person consultation. Okay. But again, all these are paid consultations, and obviously the cheaper option is just to do a video call. If you want to meet me in person, that's a bit more. But long story short, those are great ways, that you can not just help support the show, but you can also get even more information, okay? But for a lot of you guys out there in the audience that don't have any money, any resources, anything, like I did when I first moved out here, like I still don't, then that's why I provide 95, not 95, 100%. 100% of all my information is free. It's free. All the information is free. But like I said, some of you guys don't have the time to sift through the videos, so you can just set up a consultation. But if you don't have money for a consultation, well, then like I said, you can just search through my videos. Like I said, you could just search right there. Let's say residency. I'm just saying, there's like a gazillion things that you guys can search for. Okay, you got residency, whatever. Okay, safety. Okay, so, all right. So, anyways, guys. Oh, shout out to Mason Lifestyle with the $5 super chat. To bring the show to a perfect ending. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Mucho appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Mason Lifestyle. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And that's it, guys. I think we're going to wrap it up. So anyways, guys, I'll see you guys on the other channel. Again, I'm putting the link in the chat, and it's down in the description as well, and it's also down in the comment section. So I hope to see you guys there. So how much is a consultation? It says it right there. It's 2,500 pesos. All right, per session. Okay, 2,500 pesos per session. And if you want to meet me in person, well, you can just double that. All right, because well, that means I gotta get out to where again, it takes a lot more time out of my day to go meet you. All right, but again, all the prices are there, all the information is there. You guys can go on ahead and check that out on your own time. So all right, guys, I really appreciate you guys. I love you guys so very much. And you already know the deal. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to please like, please subscribe, please share, please hit the bell icon. But more importantly than anything else, please stay awesome. All right. And again, I hope to see you guys over there in a few minutes. So again, love you guys, appreciate it, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.